to For the Record. Law&Crime's Rachel Stockman joining me at this hour as we continue to talk about the Claudia Hoerig verdict from earlier today. I want to get your feelings on that verdict, but first, we said we'd play the statement from Claudia's defense attorneys before the break, so I want to do that. Remember, she herself decided not to give a statement to the judge before the sentencing. She felt that the media would misconstrue her words, so instead her defense attorney spoke on her behalf.
We recognize that any time the charge is murder, there's an unfortunate death of another. It's a tragedy, and we express our condolences for Mr. Hoerig's family. Ms. Hoerig asked me to read the following statement. She states as follows. She is not going to speak today because the press has misquoted her countless times, and throughout this case, she's going to prepare a written letter to address both the family and the media, and will provide it to her public defenders to provide to the press. She feels she's been misquoted numerous times, such as when she says instantly, it's been printed easily, and Fairy and Mary. So to avoid embarrassment and misunderstandings, she'll be addressing everyone in writing at a later opportunity as to that. As to the actual sentence, Your Honor, in looking at the factors in sentencing under the Ohio Revised Code and hearing all the facts and circumstances, in this case, we believe that a sentence in the lower available range for aggravated murder with a firearm specification is appropriate. This offense is not more serious than other offenses of a similar type, in part because we believe the testimony was that the premeditation was limited in duration, and there were extenuating circumstances relating to it.
Okay, they didn't say too much there. They said they believe that this was not premeditated. There were aggravating circumstances. And they said that Claudia wasn't speaking herself because she felt the media had misconstrued her words at earlier times, but that she would write up a letter and they would disseminate it after the fact through the attorneys. Rachel, what good does that do at this point for her to write up a letter after the fact as opposed to actually having one ready to be read to the judge at the sentencing?
Okay, legally it really doesn't do anything. However, Claudia, she's been one through this whole process, and remember, this has been a years-long process since 2007 when this happened. She has been making all sorts of appeals. When she got in jail in the United States, she started filing all these pro se motions. I think that we have not seen the last of Claudia Hoerig as in terms of her trying to get her story out there. I found it shocking that she even testified and came up with this whole other story, thinking people would actually believe her.
Yeah. Well, look, you don't know till you try, right?
Exactly.
And so I'm sure, that she'll be pursuing those appeals right away.
I would think so, knowing this woman. She tries every avenue she can. She fought her extradition from Brazil tooth and nail. It took years and years for prosecutors to finally get her here, and then, I'm sure this isn't the last we've seen of her.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and leading up to this, we did hear from a lot of the family members, not surprisingly, of her husband, Carl, who've been impacted by this long, drawn-out process. A number of them said she never expressed any remorse. Do you agree with that? Over the course of the trial, did you ever see anything from her that suggested, yeah, she really was sorry, or was it just kind of deny?
I mean, absolutely no remorse I saw. And, the fact that this got dragged on so long, and if she hadn't fled, and we can get into more of this after we hear the impact statements, but if she hadn't fled to Brazil and they had caught her right away, she would probably have gotten a much heavier sentence than what she got. That's kind of the shocking thing that I think
that this extradition agreement.
Yes, because of what they agreed to.
That's an interesting point. On the other hand, for the family, it would have been wrapped up a lot sooner, and maybe they could have had some more closure there. She would already be almost 10 years into her sentence at this point. But who knows what would have been? Let's start with Paul David Hoerig, Carl's younger brother.
I'm Paul Hoerig, Carl's younger brother. Words cannot express the pain and anguish my family has endured since Carl's murder. Claudia's decision to needlessly take my brother's life with no regard for the effects it would have on others is unimaginable. The loss of my brother is beyond words. The fact Claudia so arrogantly fled to a foreign country after killing my brother has been both heartbreaking and frustrating. Knowing Claudia selfishly went on with a normal life, starting a business, and getting remarried as if nothing had happened is difficult for me to comprehend. She lived free and in the open for over 9 years while my family and I struggled to have her detained. This nightmare was followed by almost 2 years of her filing numerous appeals to stay in Brazil. Her selfish and deceptive actions of playing games with her U.S. citizenship to maintain her freedom in Brazil reveals her true character. It has been exceptionally brutal and emotionally draining for my family to have spent 10 years and 10 months fighting to have her extradited from Brazil. There have been countless days writing, calling, emailing to gain support, missing work, attending meetings, just to bring her back to the United States. It literally took the efforts of a team, family, friends, the prosecutor, law enforcement, politicians, the state and justice departments, who have spent countless time and effort over 10 years and 10 months to finally have her extradited back to Trumbull County. Nothing this court can do will bring back my brother, but I ask this court to consider the premeditated, senseless, brutal murder of my brother. Carl selflessly served this country and was a caring father, son, brother, and friend. I ask you to consider Claudia's behavior, fleeing to a foreign country, fighting extradition, a lack of remorse, committing perjury, making false claims, and attempting to smear numerous people, including Carl, myself, and members of my family. United States officials entered into an agreement with Brazil which limited the sentence Claudia can serve in prison. This agreement was necessary to secure her extradition. I believe we should honor this agreement. Therefore, I fully support the prosecutor's recommendation of 25 years to life, plus 3 years for the gun specification. Carl was a man of honor, and he would have wanted us to honor this agreement. With that said, when the time comes, I, along with other family members, will be there to meet with the parole board to demand Claudia is treated like all other inmates. I will be there to tell Carl's story. Under the conditions, Claudia accepts full responsibility and is a model inmate. I will support parole at 30 years. I wish to express my sincerest gratitude for allowing me this opportunity to speak on behalf of my family and brother.
Hi, I'm Eva Hoerig Snowden. I'm Carl's daughter. I have spent hours and hours, 12 years really, thinking about what I would say here. My dad taught me a lot of things. He taught me that nothing is too hard to overcome, even when it seems impossible. He taught me to be positive even when I really, really don't feel like it. He taught me to just try, to go for it. And Dad made success look effortless. I wasn't old enough to know that probably wasn't the case. So I have to assume that how to do that effortlessly was a future lesson. Dad taught me everything in life is either a lesson or a joke, and if you're really lucky, it's both. He taught me respect others, and respect yourself, respect knowledge, beauty, and joy, respect the world, and it will show you what is actually important. I want to list every moment that it has hurt me that Dad's gone. I want to talk about my beautiful kids he never met. I want to talk about grief and missed opportunities, but I would never be able to stop. I want to list all the ways listening to Claudia excuse her actions for the last year was inaccurate and unbearable. That was unfair to my family, my dad, and myself. I want desperately to pull things apart, analyze them, and tell the whole world how ridiculous everything she said was. But my dad wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't be very happy with me if I did it either. He was better than that, so the best I can do is listen to his lessons and be the daughter he raised me to be. I have pages and pages of notes. I realize now that I will never have the words, but the gist of it is this. My dad was the greatest, most wonderful, best ever, should have won a trophy dad. I never told him that. Maybe I didn't know it yet, or maybe I was too young to understand. But I never told him, and it is completely and totally unfair that he isn't in my family or my family's life anymore. And my dad taught me one more lesson. He taught me that sometimes other people know better than you do. So I completely support the prosecution.
Well, lots to talk about there based on what Carl Hoerig's brother and daughter said about him. And also, remember, bringing up the fact that when Claudia was in Brazil, she moved on with her life. She got married. I want to talk about all of that. But before we get to that, let's take a quick break. It's time for our True Crime Update. Welcome back. Well, we are continuing on with this morning's sentencing of Claudia Hoerig, who last month was found guilty of murdering her husband, the Air Force veteran Carl Hoerig. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 28 years. Now, that was largely based on an extradition agreement between Brazil and the United States. Remember, after killing her husband, she fled to Brazil for 9 years. When she was brought back, there was an agreement made limiting her sentence to 30 years. We've been playing some of the victim impact statements that we heard today, and we heard from a number of Carl Hoerig's family members. Let's continue on now with Megan Murphy, who is Hoerig's niece, and read her parents' statement.
Parents, Ed and Fran Hoerig. My grandparents raised 3 outstanding men, my dad, Steve, and my 2 uncles, Carl and Paul. When my Uncle Carl was brutally murdered, I did not have any children of my own yet. Now I have 2 sweet little boys. I had no idea at the time what it was like to have love for a child. You would do anything, even die for them, and I cannot fathom the pain my grandparents feel every day since they buried their child. They are incredible parents, and I hope to raise my boys as perfect as they raised their own. My grandparents wrote, Carl was born December 24th, 1963. The Christmas seasons are now hard to deal with, as all of the holidays are. He loved to celebrate with all our families. Carl was a brilliant, amazing, kind, loving person who focused on the best qualities in everyone and overlooked the flaws. We won't get to see what new avenue Carl would pursue in education and careers. Sadly, Carl didn't get to guide his children into adulthood and meet his grandchildren. They would have been the joy of his life. Claudia took Carl's life. We have lived with this reality close to 12 years, and the thought that as parents we should have done more to protect him. Ed and I feel this pain every day. When we told Carl we really feared for his life, he said, "Don't worry, I've got this." Carl planned to move out of his house after Claudia appeared in Ravenna Court March 13, 2007 on an OVI. She was nervous about going to court, and he wanted to be there to support her. That was Carl. He would be there for her. Even though we saw the signs, it was hard for us to really believe someone could be so evil. We have listened to Claudia try to trash Carl and his family. The people who knew Carl know how he was and how good his character. Our retirement years have been spent in the quest to bring Claudia to justice. Claudia has shown no remorse for what she has done. God help the next person she perceives as doing her wrong. We support Prosecutor Dennis Watkins 100% in any decision he makes pertaining to Claudia Hoerig. Thank you.
All right, so again, that was Carl Hoerig's niece reading a statement on behalf of her parents. Law&Crime's Rachel Stockman is still with me here in studio, and as I was saying before, you know, we know it's been such a drawn-out process for this family, 11 years, but during the course of that 11 years, while this young lady, her parents, the rest of the family members were waiting for justice, waiting for Claudia to be taken into custody, waiting for a trial, she was in Brazil starting a whole new life. I mean,
yeah,
she really, it's not like she was hiding out somewhere and, you know, keeping a low profile. I mean, she moved on with her life.
She had really thought, I think, if we had talked to Claudia Hoerig before this, I think she thought she got away with this. She thought, I'm here in Brazil, I've started this whole new life. What I did is not going to follow me anymore. But sure enough, those prosecutors, that tenacious prosecutor, was not going to let this case go. He wanted justice for the family. A U.S. congressman got involved to make sure that this day in court happened. And I have to say, if I was the family member of the husband, Carl Hoerig, I think they kept it together pretty well, considering what they had to go through. And they were pretty understanding that she's not going to face life without parole because of the agreement that our government had to reach with the Brazilian government.
Do you think that the senator would have gotten involved? I mean, the prosecutor maybe would have stayed on this, but there would have been so much pressure had he not been a veteran. I mean, that obviously added a lot of weight, I think. He served this country. He served the country with honor, so it's a loss to all of us.
I think that played a big part on why the pursuit of Claudia Hoerig was forefront. I mean, it took way too long, but the fact that it did happen, I think the fact he was a veteran probably played a lot into that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Well, let's now hear from Roxy Vaughn. She is Carl Hoerig's niece, and she will be reading a statement from her brother.
Vaughn. Your Honor, thank you for the opportunity to let the family be heard. I was asked by my mother and father to read their impact statement. They are Kim and Steve Hoerig, brother of Carl. I am their daughter, Roxy. Most of us by 40 years old have dealt with the loss of someone they truly loved. That pain is indescribable. But we go through a grieving process and it gets easier in time. But even now, when you think of that loved one and the happy time you spent with them, it brings a tear to the eye. Claudia thinks she's the smartest person in the room. Not this room. No one believes her lies. Claudia is a manipulator and a vindictive liar. She has no remorse, no shame, no morals. She is evil. Her testimony was meant to deliberately hurt each member of our family. She lied about each and every one of us, and especially Carl, one of the kindest, gentlest, forgiving people we have known. She has lived as a free person in Brazil for 9 years after killing Carl. 9 years of freedom.
I got it. 9 years of freedom that Carl nor any of us had. From the day Carl was found, the friends and family of Carl were sentenced to a lifetime of grieving. Your Honor, when we are considering her sentence, please consider the prolonged pain this family has and will suffer. No, there's no amount of time she could spend in jail that will bring Carl back. But maybe we can move on our healing process knowing she's behind bars. The sentence recommended by the prosecutor, Dennis Watkins, was negotiated to Brazil to extradite Claudia. Claudia was counting on Brazil not to extradite her. Without prosecutor Dennis Watkins' agreement with Brazil, we would have never gotten her back. Honoring the agreement may open the door to a better extradition treaty between the United States and Brazil and help other victims get the justice they are looking for in much less than the 12 years we waited. Thank you for listening. Kim and Steve Hoerig.
Well, you know, something that Roxy Vaughn said there echoed what you said, Rachel, earlier, which is that she said Claudia thinks she's the smartest one in the room and she can manipulate us all, that has really sort of been this woman's mindset throughout this trial. And even before, when she was filing papers, trying to fight the extradition, you know, she has thought that she could pull this off.
Yeah, I mean, I think she thought she was the best actress, because when she got on the stand, I think she was lying. I mean, it's clear she was lying through her teeth, trying to convince the jurors of this story. And I think in her mind, she thought she was the smartest person in the room. She thought she was going to convince the jurors that her story was legitimate and that this was not a premeditated murder.
Right, right, and obviously it didn't work. And by the way, you know, we know that her attorneys have said already she does plan to appeal immediately. So a number of victim impact statements, not surprising at all. But based on what you heard when the judge delivered his sentence, I mean, do you think that even swayed him? It almost seemed like he had his mind made up already.
No, and I think based on what the prosecuting attorney, Dennis Watkins, filed and the agreement the government had already made with Brazil, listen, the judge could have given a more serious penalty or a lesser penalty, but I think he felt pretty boxed into doing that, and it was the right thing to do for the judge.
Yeah, and I mean, he was very firm, you know, when he spoke to her and delivered that sentence. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, more from Claudia herself on the stand. Stay with us.